Chapter 1. The villain who imprisons the princess. Master, Her Royal Highness the Princess has been locked up for 3 days. Are you really not going to go and see her? A soft voice with a hint of worry came to my ears. Lear sat in a chair with a somewhat empty look in his eyes. A large number of unfamiliar memories continued to pour into the depths of his consciousness, making it impossible for him to respond. It has been 3 days since he traveled to this world, but he is unable to fully control this body. The evil thoughts entangled in the original body's broken soul have been competing with him for control of the body. He slowly lowered his head and grabbed his long golden hair with both hands. After a violent tremor of his body, the evil thoughts in his mind finally dissipated completely. Master? The little maid walked up to Lear, looking a little worried. Ever since meeting the princess, her master has started to behave strangely. For example, a person often talks to himself in the mirror, smiles foolishly, dances, or roars fiercely. It's like being possessed by some evil spirit. I'm fine. After completely integrating the broken soul of his original body, Lear raised his head. After taking a look at the strange yet familiar scene from the beginning, a strange expression appeared on his face. I actually traveled into the game. The Law. This is a virtual reality online game that Lear often played in his previous life. It uses the unique legal profession as its selling point, and you can do almost anything in the game. And he traveled through time and space and became an NPC in the game, heir to the War Knight family. Stuart, son of the Duke and namesake, the Duke's son. It sounds good, but this Duke's son is just a villain boss who will die in the early stage. Although he is the heir of a family of war knights, he is obsessed with magic and becomes a wizard. He wasted his own talents and finally communicated with alien gods, becoming their lackey. The most famous thing the original body did was that he was discovered by his fiancée, the princess, when he was offering sacrifices to the foreign gods. After being controlled by the foreign gods' evil thoughts, he imprisoned the princess, which eventually led to the destruction of his family. He traveled through time after his original body imprisoned the princess. Because his original body sacrificed himself to the foreign gods, his soul was occupied by the evil thoughts of the foreign gods, so he had to compete with this evil thought for 3 whole days. Fortunately, he won in the end. Master, are you really okay? The little maid asked, still a little worried. I'm really fine. I just haven't been in a good mood these days because of practicing magic. Lear smiled and gently stroked the little maid's hair. The girl in front of him was his maid, a child he rescued from the slums. She was beautiful, with long black hair which was very rare. Almost all of his food, clothing, housing and transportation were taken care of by this little maid. Feeling the warmth of her master's palm, the little maid narrowed her eyes comfortably, until she saw Lear's smiling eyes, and then she took 2 steps back with a red face. Master, regarding the matter of Her Royal Highness the Princess. The little maid calmed down and said with some concern. Don't worry about this matter, I will take care of it. Lear nodded slightly, his eyes becoming deep. According to the plot of the game, the trigger for the Stuart family's downfall was Lear's imprisonment of the princess. As one of the oldest families in the kingdom, the Stuarts have been the sharpest blade of the royal family since the founding of the country. However, due to the rise of arcane law professionals, the Stuart family gradually declined and was no longer valued by the royal family. Recently, there have even been rumors that Lear's engagement with the princess is about to be cancelled, and the princess will be betrothed to the new Duke's son, the son of the Duke of Norton, who believes in arcane laws. Lear didn't think too much about it. Anyway, he and the princess had only met a few times. He just didn't expect that the princess would come to him secretly at such a time and run into the original body performing the sacrificial ceremony. Shaking his head slightly, he stopped thinking about it, stood up and said, "Let's go and see Her Royal Highness the Princess of Chinching." After leaving the study, Lear walked towards the underground secret room in his memory, recalling the princess's information in his mind. Princess Milia, the morning star. If Lear is a boss with little presence in the game, then Milia is the goddess in the minds of players, whether it is his impeccable appearance or his identity as the disseminator of the law of the morning star. He is extremely attractive to players. This is the core setting of the game. Every player who enters the game will generate his or her own affinity for the law. According to different affinity for the law, players can only choose the game professions born from the corresponding law. For example, his current occupation as a mage originated from the arcane law. To advance in a profession, you also need a higher affinity for the law. However, improving affinity with the law is extremely difficult and usually requires completing a large number of tasks involving the corresponding legal forces. To put it simply, it means improving the reputation of a faction. And a further explanation is the favorability of the gods. Each law represents a deity. Milia is such an existence, she alone represents the entire law of Qinqing. Some people say that Milia is the reincarnation of the god of the law of the morning star. In his previous life, Lear had never tried to improve his affinity with the law of the morning star. He was a complete war faction. As one of the 7 legendary professional players, Lear's affinity with the law of war is as high as 89.9%, and he is only one step away from entering the demigod realm. Blade Waltz is his nickname. Master, we're here. The little maid's voice brought Lear back to his senses. They had arrived at the door of the secret room. Lear paused for a moment, then gently pushed open the iron door. The light illuminated the dark secret room. Princess Milia was kneeling on the ground with shackles on her hands and feet. Her face was a little pale and her silver hair became messy. After feeling the light, she slowly raised her head and looked forward with her deep blue eyes. Lear also looked at the princess, with bright eyes, white teeth, silver hair, and blue pupils. Even though he had seen such beauty many times, it still made him a little dazed. He quickly came to his senses and his vision became clear. He didn't have many other emotions for the princess in front of him. Although Milia is famous in the game and has the title of Princess Qinqing, he did not have much contact with this princess in his previous life. Even the original body was not very familiar with this princess. Although they had an engagement, he had only met her a few times at banquets. The relationship between the two was like that of strangers with an engagement. How can there be such strange interpersonal relationships? Lear complained in his heart. He shook his head, stopped thinking about these trivial things, and recalled the general plot that followed. Due to the original body's negligence, the fact that the princess was imprisoned was exposed, and even the matter of communicating with alien gods was exposed. Communicating with other gods is an absolute taboo. The Stuart family was questioned by the Golden Church, and the old Duke denied the crimes he had committed in order to protect him. Finally, the royal family and the Golden Church jointly issued an order to clean up the Stuart family. Players flocked to the scene, and the Stuart family was destroyed by the 4th undead disaster and was nailed to the pillar of shame in the kingdom. This is the whole process of the Stuart family's downfall. It is not complicated. The source of everything revolves around the princess in front of him. It can be said that as long as the princess is solved, all problems will be alleviated. Lear looked at Miria and thought of a very direct solution. As long as the princess of Qinqing is killed and her body is dismembered, there is a high probability that his actions can be concealed. The possibility of subsequent plots will also be minimized. He walked up to the princess and stared at her for a long time, and finally sighed. Lear felt that he was a good man after all. To be honest, the princess did nothing wrong. She just happened to see his ceremony. The best outcome would be if we could negotiate and reconcile with the princess. Just as he was thinking about how to start, a panel suddenly popped up in front of him. Frowny face. Discover the carrier of the source of the law of the star causes a certain degree of negative emotional fluctuations in the carrier of the law source, and can gain corresponding law affinity. Chapter 2. Threatening the princess. After staring at the words in front of him for more than 10 seconds, Lear was sure that he was not hallucinating. The carrier of the source of law, he had never heard of such a thing, but as long as he could make the other party feel negative emotions, he could gain the corresponding affinity for the law. In his opinion, this was simply a bug-like ability. In the game, every 10% increase in the player's corresponding law affinity will give them additional attribute bonuses. Some players have tried dual cultivation or even multiple cultivation to gain more attributes, but in the end nothing came of it, because when the affinity of the law reaches 10%, the affinity of the law can only be further improved by changing jobs. Once you have changed your job, other legal forces will no longer offer you tasks to improve your legal affinity. The best you can do is to raise the initial affinity of the 3 major law. Chapter 2. Threatening the princess. After staring at the words in front of him for more than 10 seconds, Lear was sure that he was not hallucinating. The carrier of the source of law, he had never heard of such a thing, but as long as he could make the other party feel negative emotions, he could gain the corresponding affinity for the law. In his opinion, this was simply a bug-like ability. In the game, every 10% increase in the player's corresponding law affinity will give them additional attribute bonuses. Some players have tried dual cultivation or even multiple cultivation to gain more attributes, but in the end nothing came of it, because when the affinity of the law reaches 10%, the affinity of the law can only be further improved by changing jobs. Once you have changed your job, other legal forces will no longer offer you tasks to improve your legal affinity. The best you can do is to raise the initial affinity of the 3 major laws to 10%, and then switch to your major profession. This is an unsolvable dead end, but the text before him now indicates that Lear can become a multi-law professional. Is this my golden finger? Lear's eyes flickered slightly. It is not difficult to create such conditions as negative emotions. Compared to the tasks of increasing affinity with the law in his previous life, he found it quite simple, but just when I was about to establish a good relationship with the princess, the golden finger came into play. In addition to the text in front of him, he also saw some other buttons. For example, character attribute panel, skill talent panel, task panel, forum, and so on. It seems that he also brought the player's system panel with him, which is good news. You're finally here. A moving voice came from the front. Princess Milia looked at Lear with a hint of anger in her eyes. Lear looked at the girl in front of him again. He was not surprised by the princess's attitude. After all, no one would be in a good mood after being imprisoned for 3 days. He sighed in his heart. How to reconcile in this situation? After thinking for a moment, he pretended to be gentle and apologized. Your Highness, I'm sorry about what happened in the past 3 days. Hearing this, Milia became even angrier. If you really feel sorry, let me go immediately. Lear was silent for a while, then shook his head slightly. Your Highness, you know that you have seen some of my secrets. Miria stared at her nominal fiancé and was not surprised by Lear's rejection. As Lear said, she saw the other person's secret, and it was a secret that could not be discovered. Communicating with the outer gods is an absolute taboo. Once discovered, you will be judged by the Golden Church. If she were Lear, she would not let go of anyone who saw this secret. Milia was a little upset and panicked. She had sneaked into the Stuart family mansion by herself and no one knew. If Lear had been more extreme and killed her directly, no one would have known. She rolled her eyes and suddenly said calmly, I know you are worried that I will expose your secret. If that is the case, I can promise you that I will not tell anyone about your communication with the alien gods. I can swear on the golden law. Milia's words were convincing. Lear looked into the other's eyes, and after a long while, he began to laugh. Your Highness, do you think I'm a fool? If I remember correctly, you are just an ordinary person. Your affinity with the golden law, the law of war, and even the law of arcane is 0. How can you swear to the golden law if you don't have any affinity for the law? Cheating is not a good behavior. Milia's cheeks turned red. Swearing an oath to the law that one believes in is a common form of agreement, but she has no affinity with the law, so the oath will be of no use. She had originally wanted to deceive Lear, but now that she had been exposed, she became angry and ashamed. Then I swear on the honor of the royal family that as long as you let me go, I will keep the secret for you. Lear was unmoved. You'd better think carefully about what the consequences will be if you find out you've imprisoned me. Milia tried to use threats to make Lear compromise. After a brief silence, Lear shook his head. From the moment the princess tried to fool him just now, he knew that the princess would never let him go. Letting such a woman who talks nonsense go is equivalent to putting your fate in the hands of others. That if she can deceive you this time, she can use your evidence to threaten you next time. Such a bad woman must be subdued. A dangerous smile appeared on Lear's face. He was struggling over whether to use the golden finger just now, but now he didn't have to consider it anymore. Princess, if I find out that I have imprisoned you, I will not end up well, so I think it will be enough to just keep you from being discovered. What do you want to do? Milia looked at Lear, whose attitude suddenly changed, and a sense of uneasiness inexplicably arose in her heart. Do you know how to make a person never be found? Lear is like a wolf coveting the lamb. Let a person disappear from this world forever, erase all traces, body, clothes, everything will return to nothingness. I can cut your body into small parts and feed them to the beasts raised by my family, or sacrifice them to the gods. I can also burn your clothes and no one will know. Milia's heart sank, and a trace of panic flashed in her eyes. Looking at Lear's murderous face, all the momentum he had before was gone, but she still pretended to be calm and said, You must be kidding, right? I'm your fiancé, how could you? Clang! The sound of metal hitting the floor interrupted Miria's words. Lear stood in a pile of debris not far away and pulled out a rusty iron axe from it. Milia was stunned on the spot, and then she was completely panicked. What are you going to do? I am the princess of the kingdom. Lear had a sick smile on his face, ignored Milia's words, and walked towards the girl step by step, as if he really wanted to dismember the princess. Of course, it's all just bluff. He just wanted to test out his golden finger. It is not difficult to generate negative emotions, and Lear chose the simplest one at the moment. Fear. Anyone would be afraid, especially a girl like Milia, who is only 18 years old. She would burst into tears if she was scared at all. Don't come over here. If you kill my father, he will not forgive you. Milia finally realized that Lear was not joking. She backed away with horror on her face until her petite body was pressed against the wall. There is no way to retreat. When Lear saw this scene, his expression became ferocious. He strode to Milia, holding the iron axe high in his hand. Do not want. Bang! With a loud bang, the iron axe hit the ground, only a few centimeters away from Milia's thigh. The entire secret room seemed to tremble at the loud noise, and then the secret room fell into an eerie silence. Milia held her head with both hands, her eyes became dull, tears involuntarily flowed from the corners of her eyes, and she seemed to have turned into a sculpture. I am dead, she huddled in the corner in a daze, and it took her a long time to see the iron axe on the ground, only a few centimeters away from her thigh. The ground where the iron axe had hit was already full of cracks, and she also realized that the blow had not hit her. A feeling of surviving a disaster came over her, but she did not feel happy. She saw Lear raise the iron axe again, and the expression on his face became even more ferocious. Ah, what a mistake! I've never used a weapon like this before. It was a little off. I'll be more careful next time. Such words made Milia completely collapse, and tears flowed down her face like they were free. How could you do this to me? I don't want to see your secrets. I just want to see you. I don't want to. Milia spoke incoherently while sobbing, and the girl's desperate cries echoed in the secret room. Looking at that frightened look, Lear even felt guilty for a moment. The fear-emotion fluctuation value of the carrier of the Chinching law source reaches 90%, and you gain 1% affinity with the Chinching law. Just when Lear felt guilty, a line of words suddenly popped up in front of his eyes. Lear came back to his senses instantly and looked at Miria with surprise. Is this a charm? Spell? He stared at the girl in front of him and remained silent for a long time. It must be my illusion. He shook his head. Milia was just an ordinary person now. How could she have the spell of charm? Throwing down the iron axe in his hand, Lear stopped threatening the other party. Although Milia will awaken the law of Morningstar in the future, she is only an 18-year-old girl now. How can it develop sustainably if it gets scared? He also wants to max out the affinity of the Chinching law. After thinking for a moment, he walked to the girl and raised Miria's smooth chin. Crying won't solve anything, my dear princess. Milia's body trembled slightly. I can choose not to kill you, but you must stay by my side from now on. As long as my secret is not exposed, I can always support you, but if you want to escape. Lear did not continue speaking, but just looked into Miria's eyes. Milia was forced to look at Lear, her heart beating violently, and finally she could only nod with tears in her eyes. The fear-emotion fluctuation value of the carrier of the Chinching law source reaches 97%, and you gain 1% affinity with the Chinching law. Chapter 3. You have received the attention of the Lord of Blood. Eno, go wash Milia's body, change her into clean clothes, and then change her into a clean room. From now on, you will be the one watching her and forbidding her to leave the room. After leaving the secret room, Lear gave instructions to Eno, who was guarding outside. Okay, young master. Eno nodded, then seemed to be hesitant to speak. She saw everything that happened in the secret room just now, and she couldn't help but ask, Master, are you really going to kill Her Royal Highness the Princess? What's wrong? Do you think I'm cruel? Lear turned his head and looked at Eno. No. Eno will support whatever the young master wants to do. The little maid immediately shook her head, showing her firm position. Lear was a little surprised. His behavior just now could be said to be extremely bad, no different from a real villain, but he didn't see any trace of disgust in Eno's eyes. Recalling the memories in his mind, Lear soon felt relieved. In the plot of the game, the little maid is the boss in front of Lear, blocking the player for Lear, and finally dies in front of Lear. At that time, Lear had been completely corrupted by the evil thoughts of the foreign gods, and his attitude towards Eno became extremely bad, but Eno remained consistent to him. This is a good girl who devotes her whole heart to herself. His eyes softened. He gently stroked the little maid's head and said softly, You don't worry, I'm not a good person, but I won't be a truly evil person. I was just joking with the princess. Go and comfort Milia. You're both girls, so you should have a lot in common. Enjoying Lear's touch, Eno nodded gently. The young master probably wants me to persuade the princess. As long as the princess serves the young master wholeheartedly like I do, the young master's secret will not be exposed, Eno thought to himself, his eyes becoming firm. After saying goodbye to Lear, the little maid went straight into the secret room, looking at Eno's back as she left. Lear didn't know what Eno was thinking, he just felt that the girl was very motivated. He turned and left. On the way back to the study, Lear had decided not to let Milia go until his affinity with the Morningstar law was maxed out. The golden finger is indeed useful. Once the princess calms down, he will tease or threaten her from time to time, or the princess cannot be released, so we must be careful not to let the fact that she is imprisoned be exposed. Looking back at the following plot, it seemed that his archenemy, the son of the Duke of Norton, was going to cause trouble for him. The original body was no match for the other party, but Lear didn't care much. The Duke of Norton's son was named Eric. In the game's plot, the king did change the engagement and betrothed the princess to the other party, but the unlucky old Eric was assassinated by the blood cult's followers before he could marry the beauty. After Lear was defeated by the players, the blood cult hidden in the kingdom completely surfaced, and Eric died in the blood cult's revenge. Lear was walking and thinking. When he reached the hall of the mansion, a hurried voice suddenly came from outside. "Lear! Are you there?" A beautiful figure rushed into the room. It was a lady in tight clothes, with a knight's rapier on her waist and a golden ponytail casually thrown behind her. "Sister?" Lear turned his head and the woman's information appeared in his mind. It was his sister, Highness Stuart. "Lear, we have to go find our father. That despicable villain, the Duke of Norton, doesn't deserve to be called a noble." Highness gnashed her teeth and cursed. Lear was a little confused. "Sister, calm down first, what happened?" "Don't you know? Duke Norton actually asked His Majesty to marry Princess Milia to his son. He clearly knew that the princess was engaged to you. Has Your Majesty agreed?" Lear continued to ask without being too surprised. "His Majesty did not agree directly, but asked you and Eric to fight in the kingdom arena in a week. Only the winner can marry Her Royal Highness the Princess." Highness said angrily, with a hint of worry in her tone. She knew Lear's strength. Although he and Eric were both mid-level mages, there was still a gap in strength. Lear frowned at this time. He didn't know much about the plot of this game. He only knew that his engagement with the princess was cancelled in the end. He didn't expect that the winner would be decided by a fight, and the fight will be held in a week. The princess is still imprisoned by him and has not returned to the palace for 3 days. The king cannot be unaware of this. But now the king seems to be completely unaware that the princess is missing and is even preparing to decide the princess's fiancé by fighting? Something is wrong, he sensed a strange aura. "Why aren't you in a hurry at all?" Avian looked at Lear with some disappointment. She dotes on her younger brother but feels helpless about it. Although he was born with a 9% affinity for the law of war and had amazing talent, he did not choose the knight profession but instead chose to become a mage who believed in the arcane law. Lear's initial affinity for the arcane law was only 5%, which could only be considered a medium talent, far inferior to his talent for the law of war. Not only Avian, most people in the kingdom couldn't understand why Lear became a wizard. Although professionals of arcane law are more popular than professionals of war law nowadays, Lear is the heir of the Stuart family, the Duke of War Knights. Lear could understand Avian's anxiety. After all, the original body's strength was there, but things are different now. Lear shrugged and said leisurely, "There's no need to rush. If Eric wants to duel, then let's duel. I was a legendary professional in my previous life. And the other party was just a mid-level professional. With his professional experience and combat skills as a legendary player, he has plenty of ways to defeat Eric. This is the confidence of the strong. What he cares more about now is his own character attributes." Silently, Lear clicked on the character panel. He hadn't seen YET. As soon as he opened it, he saw several lines of text jumping out in front of his eyes. "Due to soul fusion, your affinity with the law of war increases to 89.9%. Your affinity for the law of war has reached 80%. You gain strength plus 32, constitution plus 24, agility plus 24, you have gained 5% of the blood law essence, and your blood law affinity has increased to 80%, your affinity for the blood law has reached 80%, you gain constitution plus 40, mysticism plus 40, you have mastered the body of the blood spreader and successfully reached a contract with the Lord of Blood. You have received the attention of the Lord of Blood." End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Where can I click? Sometimes being noticed by a spirit isn't a good thing, especially when this spirit doesn't sound like a friendly one. Lear frowned. He had clearly dispelled the evil thoughts of the foreign gods, so why were they still haunting him? He felt a little helpless and looked at his character attributes. Name: Lear Stuart. Template: Elite, Life and Magic plus 100%. Title: Blood Spreader. Level 43. Intermediate, Experience 600. Life 23400. Mana 3000. Attribute points 0. Occupation: Mage/. Blood Apostle, God-given occupation, 42743256551 special attributes, Charm 10, Luck 8 Law Essence, Blood Law Essence 5% Law Affinity, or 89.9%, Blood 80%, Arcane 12%, Morningstar 2% Specialty, Unyielding Will Skills, Spell Compilation, Arcane Missiles, Resist Ice Ring, Ice Lance, Evaluation. A person who is favored by the gods, an incredible multi-law professional, no one knows where his future will go. Lear was somewhat surprised to see his own character attributes. The total of the 5-dimensional attributes exceeds 200. What is this concept? The game only gives one free attribute point each time you upgrade. In addition, for every 10% increase in affinity with the law that the player believes in, the player will receive a point attribute bonus automatically allocated according to the law. For example, for every 10% increase in affinity with the law of war, you will gain 4 points of strength, 3 points of constitution, and 3 points of agility. Under normal circumstances, if a single law player wants to have a 5-dimensional attribute of more than 200, he must be a saint of at least level 100. And Lear is just a level 43 mage. Is this the benefit of multiple laws? Lear suddenly felt that it was not unacceptable to be noticed by the Lord of Blood. 80% affinity brings him 80 attribute points, which is really outrageous. However, although the attributes are terrifying, it does not mean that it is invincible. He is a mage, and all spell attack damage is linked to intelligence. 56 points of intelligence is just the level of a normal mage with full intelligence points added. Although the other attributes seem terrifying, to be honest they are just a little stronger than the average mage, have a little more health, and run a little faster. That's it. Lear, are you sure you want to duel with Eric? As Lear checked the panel, Avian's voice sounded again. Lear came back to his senses and looked at Avian. The worry on her face made his expression change slightly. This kind of feeling that comes from kinship was the first time he felt it. There is not a single other thought mixed in, it is just wholehearted care. In his previous life, he was an orphan and was very successful in the game, but he had never experienced such feelings. Most of the people around him approached him with a purpose. His eyes softened. Sister, you don't have to worry about Eric. My strength has improved recently, and I have learned new spells. I will be able to teach Eric a lesson in a week. Are you serious? Ivian asked doubtfully, looking at Avian, who didn't quite believe in him. Lear knew that such words would not be very convincing before he demonstrated his strength. He chuckled, opened his arms and gave Avian a gentle hug, then whispered, "Oh my dear sister, please trust me this time. Although I was unreliable before, I will grow up. I promise you in the name of the law of war that I will win. I will definitely win." There was unparalleled confidence in Lear's tone. Ivian stood there in a daze, and it took her a while to come back to her senses. Feeling the warm touch on her body, she pushed Lear away with a blushing face. "I hope you are really confident, of course. Then I'll wait and see." Ivian glared at Lear, then as if she had thought of something, she said angrily, "Huh, really, you're still hugging your sister when you're this old? Didn't my sister like to kiss and hug me the most when we were little?" "Shut up." Ivian blushed and stretched out her hand to teach her brother a lesson. The two siblings played for a while, then sat on the chairs and smiled at each other. At noon, after having lunch with his sister, Lear saw her off. After all, Avian is the Knight Commander of the Royal City Guard and has a busy schedule. Watching Ivian's leaving back, Lear's mood calmed down. He was originally a little anxious about the time travel in his current situation, but now he has a sister who loves him. Feel good. After his sister left, he came to the training ground in the mansion alone. The original body usually practiced spells here. He held the staff in his hand and activated the magic power according to the memory in his mind. A spear of ice emitting chill slowly formed in front of him. When the magic power was concentrated to the peak, the ice spear shot out and pierced the wooden man used for training, piercing the wooden man. At the same time, the thick layer of ice also froze the wooden man. Intermediate spell, Ice Lance. It has good power and freezing effect, and it is the only mid-level spell he knows. It can be seen that the original body's arcane talent is indeed very ordinary. As a mid-level mage who has only learned one mid-level skill, it's no wonder that he is no match for Eric. Lear shook his head slightly and took out a book from his storage ring. When he opened the book, a few lines of text appeared in his eyes. Intermediate spell, Frost Nova. Learning requirements, Arcane Law Affinity 12%, Intelligence 50, Mysticism 10. Do you want to study? After seeing this line of text, a smile appeared on Lear's lips. This is another intermediate level spell that the original body had painstakingly obtained after advancing to the intermediate level, but because the spell is too complicated, He has not yet learned it. NPC mages in the game need to constantly study and research to learn spells and understand the secrets of spell symbols, but now it is different. Lear had the template for the game. Now he doesn't need to learn those complicated spell runes at all. He just needs to click on the places where he doesn't know how to spell. You learned the spell Frost Nova. As the text jumped, Frost Nova appeared in Lear's skill column. Without hesitation, Lear swung his staff, and the azure arcane light shone. The next second, ice quickly covered the surrounding open space. The wooden men in front were all frozen under the ice. Frost Nova is a powerful control skill that can be used alone or in groups. It was one of the essential skills for mages in the past and is very practical. Putting away the staff, Lear nodded with satisfaction. He had learned the spell, but that was not enough. In order to avoid any accidents during the fight, he still needed to make some preparations. The next morning, Lear changed into a light noble dress and left home. His destination was the library of the Arcane Academy, which contained a large collection of books, including many introductory spellbooks. The mage profession under the arcane law is different from other professions. It cannot automatically comprehend spell skills through level promotion and needs to learn them on its own. The library of the academy is the place to learn spells, but the spells there are all very common ones. No one would put the truly powerful spells in a public place for people to learn. The mage profession has another special feature. There are only 2 spells that are truly passed down by the law: spell compilation and arcane missiles. All other spells were created by other powerful wizards through spell compilation. Lear remembered that in his previous life, there were many powerful spells created by players. Although Lear has never played a wizard, has he ever seen a pig run? Even though he has never eaten pork. With the game panel, Lear thought he could try to restore the spells he created. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Shouldn't a bootlicker be willing to work hard and never complain? Not long after, Lear came to a tall building, and many wizards in wizard robes were coming in and out. Just as he was about to walk through the door, he heard the voices of the female mage apprentices gathered nearby talking. Have you heard? Eric will be competing with Senior Lear in a week. Of course I heard about it. The news has spread. That bastard Eric has no gentlemanly manners at all. Lear listened quietly without much expression on his face, but the next words made his face look strange. That's right. Senior Lear is so pitiful. He is obviously very good. Although he is a little worse than Eric, a 19-year-old intermediate wizard is still among the best in the history of the kingdom. I really don't know why His Majesty agreed to the Duke of Norton's request. But this is not bad. If Senior Lear and Her Royal Highness the Princess engagement is really cancelled, then do I have a chance? Compared to Eric, I still like Senior Lear more. Although he is a little cold, he is really handsome. Lear couldn't help but shudder. What are these female apprentices talking about? He thought that if the news of his fight with Eric spread, he would be laughed at. After all, someone wanted to steal his fiancée, which was a naked humiliation, but the facts seemed different from what he imagined. He turned his head and glanced at himself in the glass. With blonde hair and blue eyes, he looked extremely handsome, far better than Eric. He remembered that he also had the title of the most handsome man in the royal city. Is this a world where appearance matters? Is that Senior Lear? Where is it? The female apprentices who were gathered together turned around one by one and saw Lear, who was about to enter the college library. Feeling the loving, passionate, or pitying gazes around him, Lear stopped, turned his head, and smiled back. It's really Senior Lear. A group of young girls stared at him, making Lear feel unreal. Aren't I a villain? Why do I feel more like a popular protagonist? Is there something wrong with this world? The original body was clearly a cold and silent person in the academy. But why were these schoolgirls like this? Lear touched his chin and thought about it. It could only be because of his face. Senior, are you here in the library to learn magic? The bold mage apprentice next to him asked. Lear looked at the female apprentice and was about to answer when a cold voice suddenly sounded from behind him. Liar, you still remember to come to the academy. In the library, a girl with long, slightly curly brown hair slowly walked out. The girl was quite beautiful, wearing glasses, and there was a hint of dissatisfaction in her dark eyes. As the girl continued to walk, her dark blue wizard robe swayed, occasionally revealing the fullness of her chest. Lear turned his head and saw the girl approaching. Tivine. He said the girl's name, but his eyes narrowed. A trace of barely perceptible disgust flashed across his eyes. The girl in front of him was an acquaintance of his in the academy, the dean's daughter. Tell me, why did you stand me up? Didn't you agree to be my sparring partner and practice magic together? The girl stared at Lear with an unfriendly look. as if she was going to make him pay if he didn't give her a reasonable explanation. Lear thought about it and realized that this was indeed the case. 3 days ago, his original self had promised to be a sparring partner for the girl in front of him. Really? Maybe I forgot. He looked at the girl in front of him and answered nonchalantly. Tiffany was stunned for a moment. Lear was just perfunctorily answering her questions? In the past, Lear always stayed by her side and agreed to any request. Now that he stood her up, he actually acted as if it didn't matter. She couldn't stand it anymore and raised her eyebrows. Lear, what's your attitude? Lear looked at the angry girl and smiled. I just forgot something. Why are you so angry? Why should I be angry? You broke your promise. You have never done this before. Don't you regard me as a friend? Seeing Lear's attitude, Tiffany became even more excited, and even tears welled up in her eyes. It looked as if he had suffered a great injustice. Watching Divine's show quietly, Lear just felt like vomiting. Why would the original body like such a person? Divine, the daughter of the Dean of the Arcane Academy, has excellent looks and extremely strong magical talent. Players will also establish connections with each other when learning spells. Generally, such game characters should be like goddesses in the player's impressions, but in the game law, Divine was ranked in the list of the most disgusting game characters. The reason is simple: Divine is a top-notch green tea. She is a person who is very good at using her appearance to pretend to be pitiful to gain sympathy, and once she has gained enough benefits, she will kick the other party away. In the past life, many players were cheated by her. The original body was the same. He was attracted by the other party's appearance and even abandoned the war knight and chose the mage profession because of the other party's instigation. The original body was really obedient to Tiffany, but was always kept in suspense by Tiffany. Like a bootlicker, she knew that Lear liked her, but she never let Lear hold her hand and never gave Lear any gifts. Lear remembered that there was another plot later. After the princess's imprisonment was exposed, her sister went to Tiffany for help. Avian thought that given Lear's usual attitude towards Tiffany, the other party should be able to lend a helping hand, or at least ask Tiffany's father, the extraordinary wizard, to plead for her. But in the end, Tiffany reported it to the Golden Church, which led to Avian's arrest by the Golden Church and then her execution in public in the name of heresy trial. He has a sister who cherishes him, but he chooses to be a bootlicker of Divine. What a hopeless waste. Thinking of how Tiffany cared about him yesterday, a trace of anger inexplicably emerged in Lear's heart. Are you listening to me? Seeing that Lear remained silent, Tiffany cried even more excitedly. The apprentices around them also noticed the situation of the two and gathered around. Lear took a deep breath. If it were the old Lear, he would have knelt down and begged for forgiveness by now, but he was not like that. I listened. Listen, why don't you answer me? You, how do you want me to answer? Beg for your forgiveness in a humble manner? Lear interrupted Divine coldly. Just because you broke the appointment, you think I don't consider you a friend? If that's the case, then our friendship is really cheap. Following Lear's cold words, the scene fell silent, and Tiffany opened her eyes wide, unable to believe that Lear would actually speak to her like this. Ignoring Tiffany's attitude, Lear continued, how did I treat you before? I would try my best to meet any of your requests and obey you in everything. But what about you? You just think that I didn't treat you as a friend because I didn't show up for the date. Do you know what happened recently? Eric wanted to duel with me and humiliate Stuart's dignity. With your status, you should know about this, right? But after you knew about this, have you ever thought about me? Have you ever considered my feelings? What will happen to me? Why didn't I show up? Have you ever thought about the reason? Don't you think you are too selfish? You only consider your own feelings and never consider other people's situations. One word after another came out of Lear's mouth, like a string of cannonballs. Not giving Tiffany a chance to speak, Tiffany opened her mouth slightly, not knowing how to refute for a moment. One word after another came out of Lear's mouth, like a string of cannonballs. Not giving Tiffany a chance to speak, Tiffany opened her mouth slightly, not knowing how to refute for a moment. When did Lear dare to accuse her like this? Lear was just her licker, and shouldn't a licker be hard-working and willing to work hard? End of this chapter. Chapter 6: The Girl Next Door. There are 3 legendary characters in the Arcane Academy: Tiffany, the dean's daughter and a genius girl; Eric, who is ugly but rich; and Lear, who is handsome but only revolves around Tiffany. All 3 of them broke through to the level of intermediate wizards at the age of 18, and were among the best in the history of the Arcane Academy. Among them, Divine and Eric are both gifted, but only Lear has reached the level of a mid-level wizard by working harder than ordinary people. In order to catch up with Tawini's practice progress, when others were playing, Lear was learning spells, and when others were holding banquets, Lear was still learning spells. However, although Lear has the worst talent, his popularity is the highest among the three. He is so handsome, and he is not undeservedly called the most handsome man in the royal city. When he first came to the college, many girls surrounded Lear. Later, because Tywin didn't like Lear to be too close to other girls, Lear became aloof. Many female mages in the academy envy Divine. Who doesn't want to have a handsome man who is obedient to them? Divine is also proud of this, but now, such pride has been trampled upon the ground. So Senior Divine is so excessive? Senior Lear is so pitiful. Looking at the reactions of the people around him, Lear smiled disdainfully in his heart. This is the effect he wants. He was disdainful in his heart, but he still showed a sad expression on the surface. I really cared about you, but now I am very disappointed, Divine. After saying the last sentence, Lear turned and walked into the library, leaving the crowd eating onlookers and the bewildered Divine. Before entering the library, he turned around to look at Divine. The sadness in his eyes was so great that he felt he could win an Oscar for Best Actor. Isn't it just green tea? Then let's see who can act better. It was not until Lear's figure disappeared from sight that Tywin came back to her senses and her face turned red. The whispers around her made her feel like needles piercing her heart. She narrowed her eyes and glared at the apprentices around her. What are you doing here? Have you learned the spells well? Do you understand the arcane symbols? It's almost time for class. Why don't you go back to the classroom? The apprentices around suddenly fell silent, scattered like birds and beasts, and disappeared from Divine's sight. Lear walked into the library, recalling the location of the spellbook. As for Divine, he had forgotten about her. The other party's father is an extraordinary wizard, so you can just scold him and not do anything too extreme for the time being. Soon he came to the room where the spellbooks were kept. There are not many bookshelves here, only a few rows, and there are not many books on the shelves. Any spell that can be cast is precious, and you can only learn the most common ones in the library. He walked slowly through the bookshelves and selected 4 books in total. Just stretch out your hand and tap lightly to learn the spell. You have learned the apprentice level spell resonance. You have learned the elementary spell vacuum technique. You have learned the apprentice level spell interference fluctuation. You have learned the basic spell magic amplification. 4 new spells appeared in Lear's skill slot in an instant. In his memory, these spells were the ones his wizard friend used to create his own spells in his previous life. After learning the spells, Lear did not stop, but went downstairs and left the library, heading straight for the spell training ground. The morning was basically filled with spell theory classes, and the training ground was empty. Just as Lear was about to walk into the training ground, he noticed a figure following him, glancing at the other party. He ignored him and walked into the training ground alone. Standing in the training ground, Lear took out his staff. In his mind, he recalled the spell runes constructed by his wizard friend in his previous life. There are 2 ways to create your own spells. Point 1 is to construct a completely new spell rune, which is an extremely difficult method that requires a deep understanding of the arcane. The second is to decompose and reorganize existing spell runes. Most homemade spells take the second approach. For players, the second method is also the quickest and easiest. Just like building blocks. It's that simple to decompose and combine different spell runes and then turn them into a new symbol. You don't need to understand the secrets of spell runes like the NPCs, you just need to break them down and combine them. However, precisely because they do not understand the true secrets of spell runes, the effects of player-created spells are usually very unstable. Getting a usable self-created spell depends more on luck. Lear activated his spell compilation skill, and the world before his eyes became dim. Strange symbols floated in his eyes. That was all the magical knowledge he had learned. Lear first found the spell rune of vacuum magic and then found the spell rune of interference wave. According to the pattern in memory, the 2 runes were decomposed and combined together. In a corner not far away, Divine looked at Lear holding up the staff. The faint blue arcane light enveloped Lear's body, and a powerful arcane wave spread out. Such energy has reached the level of intermediate spells, but there is no other spell effect in front of Lear except the arcane energy fluctuations. Divine frowned, not knowing what Lear was doing. There was some indignation in her eyes. After Lear accused her just now, she thought about it carefully and felt that Lear was bluffing. She knew better than anyone what Lear liked about her. Given the love Lear had for her, it was impossible for him to point fingers at her and make her look bad in front of everyone. Besides, Eric wants to steal Lear's fiancée, so Lear should be happy. After all, many times she rejected Lear's pursuit because Lear had a princess fiancée, so it is impossible for Lear to be angry with himself because of Eric. Why then does Lear blame her? There is only one possibility. Lear was deliberately trying to attract her attention. He wanted her to blame herself and finally apologize to Lear, so that she would agree to his pursuit. Divine pouted. She admitted that she didn't care much about Lear, but she wanted to force herself to apologize in this way? Impossible. Not only would she not apologize, but she also insisted that Lear apologize to her, otherwise she would never talk to Lear again. Lear, who was concentrating on constructing the spell, had no idea what Divine was thinking. Not if he knew about it, he would probably yell angrily, "You bitch!" He had already completed the construction of the first spell, and a line of text popped up in front of him. "You have created a new spell, please name it, Fire Extinguishing Technique." After thinking for a moment, Lear said the name of this spell in the previous life was Fire Extinguisher. As the name suggests, it is a spell that can destroy the fire attribute, use vacuum magic to create a vacuum environment, and then interfere with the runes of wave spells. Without air, fire cannot burn. If there is another interference, all intermediate and lower fire spells will be finished. Naming completed. Fire Extinguishing. Intermediate spell learning requirements: Arcane Law Affinity 12%, Intelligence 30, Mysticism 20. Evaluation: a new spell created by a mid-level wizard based on the vacuum technique, which can prevent the release of mid-level and lower fire spells. You created the intermediate spell Fire Extinguishing, gained 0.5% affinity with the Arcane Law, and gained 50,000 experience points. End of this chapter. Chapter 7, Lear's Arcane Cannon. After completing his first spell, Lear's confidence grew. Even though Eric was stronger than him, he was a wizard who specialized in fire magic, and with the Fire Extinguishing technique, he was already invincible. He activated the spell compilation skill again. This time he chose 2 spells. Since he had chosen them, he naturally had to create them himself. In the game a week later, he not only has to win, but also win beautifully. Arcane Missiles plus Mana Amplification plus Spell Resonance. 2 Beginner spells and an apprentice level spell can create an astounding spell. Dazzling light gathered on the staff, and the arcane missiles that were originally the size of stones became as huge as cannonballs. The energy fluctuations generated far exceeded the fire extinguishing technique just now, and were already close to the realm of high-level spells. A smile appeared on Lear's lips. With the experience of the fire extinguishing technique he just created, he became more adept at it. Circles of arcane ripples rippled in his hands. The spell had reached its critical point, and he shot out the gathered shells without hesitation. With a purple tail, the shell popped out instantly, leaving a trail of energy ripples in the air, and shot rapidly towards the mithril puppet in the center of the training ground. Boom, a loud bang. The mithril puppet in the center was torn into pieces in an instant, and the violet arcane energy spread in all directions, even forming a big hole on the ground. You have created a new spell, please name it. The system prompt text appeared in front of Lear again. Looking at the messy training ground, Lear was very satisfied with the power of the spell. Just as he was about to name the spell, a voice came. "Lear, what was that just now?" Not far away, Divine came trotting to Lear, her eyes full of excitement and surprise. Seeing Tivany coming, Lear just glanced at her. He saw that the other party had been peeking at him, and he also understood what Divine came over to do. Although this genius wizard is a green tea, he is keen on studying powerful spells and is extremely fanatical. Seeing the shells he just fired, he must be feeling very excited now. "That's a spell I created myself," Lear said with a smile. "A self-created spell?" Divine exclaimed, her face full of disbelief. "Any questions?" Lear waved his hand. Tivany opened her mouth. "This is a big problem. This is a homemade spell. This is her dream. She dreamed of creating a powerful spell of her own and naming it after herself, but her father said that creating one's own spells belongs to the realm of extraordinary wizards, and unless one reaches the extraordinary realm, it would be difficult to create even apprentice-level spells. Even if you decompose and reconstruct it through other spells, it is difficult, because without reaching the extraordinary realm, it is difficult for you to understand the spell runes. It will be impossible for you to extract the spell runes from the spell. Is this really a spell you created?" Tivany felt unwilling. It was obvious that Lear had never been as good as her in the academy, but now Lear had achieved what she dreamed of. "Of course, this is my own spell. I named it Tivany's Arcane Cannon. What do you think?" Lear nodded with a smile. "You want to name this spell after me?" Tivany was stunned, and then her heart trembled. The girl looked at Lear and was really moved at this moment. It was the first time she discovered that in addition to Lear's perfect appearance, he also had such shining points. Lear had a gentle smile on his face, and he found it a little funny to see Tivany trembling slightly with excitement. He suddenly changed the subject. Of course, this is impossible. This is a spell I created myself. Its name should be Lear's Arcane Canon. Naming completed. Lear's Arcane Canon. Intermediate spell learning requirements: Arcane Law Affinity 12%, Intelligence 50, Mysticism 40. Evaluation: a new spell created by a mid-level mage based on arcane missiles. Although it is only a mid-level spell, its power is close to that of a high-level spell. You created the intermediate spell Lear's Arcane Canon, gained 1% affinity with the arcane law, and gained 50,000 experience points. The system panel appeared in front of him, and another spell appeared in Lear's skill bar. Lear successfully named the spell. Devine also reacted, and the passion in her heart seemed to be extinguished by a basin of cold water. Are you kidding me? She demanded angrily. This is my spell. How I name it should be none of your business. The grievance and anger in his heart kept pouring out. Damn you, Lear. Just wait. Do you think you can beat Eric just by creating a new spell? When you lose the duel in a week, I'll see if you come and apologize to me. Stamping her feet, Tivany gave Lear a fierce look in the direction he left, then turned and left. On the way home, Lear was in a good mood. Not only did he successfully cast 2 spells, but he also confronted the bad woman Devine. When I got home, it was already dark and the maid Eno had been waiting at the door for a long time. Eno, how is Milia now? Lear asked casually, handing the outer dress coat to the little maid. Taking Lear's clothes, Eno replied, Her Royal Highness is still in the bedroom, but she is still a little unstable. Do you want to go see her? Lear thought for a few seconds and shook his head. Maybe in a few days. After taking a bath with Eno's help, Lear returned to his room to sleep. End of this chapter. Chapter 8, Extraordinary Sword Expertise. In the luxurious bedroom, Milia sat in front of the window, hugging a soft silk pillow. Her eyes were looking at Lear in the practice field outside the window. Arcane fluctuations continuously emanated from the staff in Lear's hand. Various spells shot out and smashed the alchemical puppets in the training ground into pieces. That quick and decisive action made Milia feel that even the high-level professionals in the palace were inferior to him. After destroying the last alchemical puppet in the training ground, the maid Eno, who was standing nearby, handed Lear the tea that had been prepared long ago. Lear also patted the maid's head, and the atmosphere between the two seemed very harmonious. Milia fell silent. The current Lear was completely different from the Lear in the secret room before. He doesn't have that eerie temperament, but is rather gentle and sunny. Coupled with his handsome looks, he can be said to be perfect as a fiancé. But when Milia thought of what Lear did to her in the secret room, she couldn't help but feel fear in her heart. After drinking Eno's tea, as if feeling the gaze, Lear raised his head and looked not far away, just in time to see Milia holding the curtain and looking at him carefully. He smiled back. Milia seemed to have seen something horrible. She quickly pulled up the curtains and walked into the house. By the way, Eno, how is Milia doing recently? Lear suddenly asked. Eno was stunned for a moment, and followed Lear's gaze to the bedroom where Milia was imprisoned not far away. Her Royal Highness's mood has almost stabilized. Her appetite has improved recently and she even chats with me. Is that so? A smile appeared on Lear's lips. If that's the case, then he can reap some more profits. Handing the staff in his hand to Eno, Lear walked straight towards the 3-story mansion. 3 days had passed since he returned from the Arcane Academy, and during these 3 days he had almost adapted to the profession of mage. To put it simply, it means throwing spells at the enemy while ensuring your own safety. Although it felt quite interesting, he still missed the passion and excitement of close combat as a war knight. Thinking in his mind, Lear slowly stopped walking. He suddenly realized a problem. With his current strength, physique, and agility attributes, he is actually no different from the balanced war knight in his previous life. Although he does not have the professional skills of a war knight, as long as he has the sword skills learned from his previous life, he may be able to engage in close combat as a legendary war knight. Those sword skills have long been engraved deep in his soul. Without the skills of a war knight, perhaps you can use spells to assist sword fighting? Lear's eyes sparkled slightly. Melee mage, this was a good idea, and he immediately wanted to try whether he could still use the sword skills he had learned in his previous life. Eno, is there a sword at home? He turned his head suddenly and asked the little maid following behind him. Sword? Eno was stunned for a moment, and then his expression became a little strange. Master, do you want to practice sword? But aren't you a mage? Walking on the streets of the royal city, Lear felt helpless. As a family of war knights, is it reasonable that there is not even a sword in the house? he had to go out and find one, and even put the plan of going to Milia's room to brush up on his affinity for the law on the back burner. How can a woman be as important as a sword? If he becomes a melee mage, he will create a new genre, unique to his genre. After all, other mages don't have extra attribute points to add to attributes such as strength, physique, and dexterity. Soon, Lear came to a blacksmith shop in the royal city. According to his memory, the blacksmith shop is located at the junction of the royal city's citizen area and the slums, in a very remote corner. There are not many people around. There are several long swords and large shields placed at the door. Lear remembered that in his previous life, a player had obtained an extraordinary level rapier here. The levels of equipment in the game are the same as professions, from blank to elementary, intermediate, advanced, extraordinary. Extraordinary equipment can be considered as powerful equipment that can only be obtained in the middle and late stages, and it corresponds to extraordinary level professionals. When you walk into the blacksmith shop, you are greeted by a scorching hot breath. The furnace nearby is still burning, and a blacksmith apprentice is constantly hammering on a red-hot piece of iron. A wizard. A lazy voice came from not far away. Lear looked in the direction of the sound and saw an old man with a white beard leaning back in a chair, squinting at him. Oh, delicate wizard, this is not the place you should come to. If you want to buy a decorative sword, you can turn right at the end of Little Street. There is a decorative shop that has what you need. Lear also looked at the old man in front of him. He clearly felt a trace of power from the law of war in the other person. This was a professional, and not weak. He smiled slightly and said calmly, "I'm not here to buy those decorations. What I need is a real weapon that can kill people." The old man was a little surprised. "Are you sure? You are a mage. The weapons we have here are not something that ordinary people can use." Without waiting for the old man to finish speaking, Lear picked up a sword at the door. He waved the sword in his hand as if he was holding a toy, creating sword flowers. "You have obtained the expertise, extraordinary sword expertise, superb sword expertise. When you use sword weapons, the attack strength increases by 50% and the attack speed increases by 20%. The system panel appeared in front of Lear, those things engraved. In the soul will not disappear just because you change your body. Like an instinct, Lear's swordsmanship as a legendary war knight bloomed again. He felt joy and nostalgia in his heart. For a strong man who wields a sword, the sword is his soul. The old man lying on the chair saw this scene, and his eyes instantly became sharp. "Who are you?" "Lear Stuart, a wizard." Lear replied lightly, holding the sword in his hand. "Lil Stuart? Are you the heir of the Stuart family who changed his profession to become a wizard?" The old man was stunned. "Yes," Lear replied. After a while, the old man reacted and looked at Lear with strange eyes. "No wonder your swordsmanship is pretty good, but you have already changed your job to a mage. What do you still need a sword for?" "Exercise." Lear made up a random excuse. "Well, it can also be used for self-defense in times of crisis, such as when the magic power is exhausted." The old man curled his lips when he heard this, obviously not believing Lear's nonsense. He waved his hand and pointed to the weapon rack not far away. "Never mind. It's up to you. If you want weapons, go over there and take a look. It's enough to train you to defend yourself." Lear glanced at the weapon rack. Most of them were blank and beginner weapons. There were no intermediate weapons. He shook his head and said, "Not these. The weapon I want is the strongest weapon you have here. You should know what I mean." He stared at the old man in front of him with deep eyes. The blacksmith shop fell silent, and the blacksmith apprentice at the side also stopped what he was doing and looked at Lear curiously. The silence lasted for several tens of seconds before the old man laughed and said, "That's the funniest joke I've ever heard in my life, Joaquin. You, a wizard, want the best weapon I have?" End of this chapter. Chapter 9, Is This a Magician? Boy, I admit that your swordsmanship is pretty good, but you are just a mage. A truly powerful weapon will only follow a powerful warrior, not a pampered noble wizard. The old man who called himself Jacqueline sneered disdainfully. The blacksmith apprentices around him also showed strange expressions. Facing Jacqueline's ridicule, Lear did not get angry, but laughed. "How do you know that a pampered wizard won't become a powerful warrior?" Jacqueline shook his head, dismissing Lear's words. "What kind of profession is a mage? All you have to do is stand at a distance and cast spells. There's no need to fight with real swords and guns like the professions under the laws of war. This is the style that those noble lords like. In addition, mages need to learn profound spell theories and spell runes, which makes this a profession tailor-made for those nobles who think they are superior, mysterious and elegant. These are synonymous with the mage to it is precisely because of these reasons that when the arcane law was introduced to the kingdom of Brethil, it quickly attracted the attention of a large number of nobles. The laws of war are also gradually declining under the impact of the laws of arcane. Jacqueline looked at Lear, the heir to the Stuart family, who had also abandoned the war knight and chose to become a wizard. In his view, this was a betrayal of the laws of war. He would not allow his heirloom to fall into the hands of such a person. Lear tapped lightly on the hilt of the sword in his hand. He didn't know how the player in his previous life got this extraordinary weapon, however, since the other party was able to get it, it means that this extraordinary weapon has a corresponding task. He raised his head and said to Jacqueline after careful consideration, "Since you think I am not worthy of the strongest weapon you have here, do you dare to make a bet with me? I see you are also a professional, probably at the intermediate level? Let's have a competition. I won't use any spells, just a pure battle. If I win, you can give me the best weapon you have. How about that?" After Lear finished speaking, Jacqueline was obviously stunned for a moment, but soon his expression turned gloomy. "Are you humiliating me? How could that be? I just made a reasonable request. You said that powerful weapons will only follow powerful warriors. Although I am a mage, I think I am also a powerful warrior." Lear shrugged. "Besides, I don't know how to use my magic skills, which should be an advantage for you. A wizard who doesn't use spells wants to defeat me?" Jacqueline felt that he was underestimated. He stood up from his chair in an instant, his face flushed red. "Yeah, a wizard who doesn't use spells wants to beat you. Do you want to compete? If you don't think you are sure, you can just pretend I never said these words." Lear looked at Jacqueline with a smile, not caring about the other's anger at all. That indifferent attitude obviously made Jacqueline even more angry. The old man slammed the table and said viciously, "Boy, you asked for this. You will pay the price for your arrogance. So you accepted my invitation to duel? Then if I win, the most powerful weapon you have here will be mine. If you can really defeat me without using any magic, what if I give you the Night Rose?" "So it's called Night Rose? Not a bad name." Lear chuckled with interest. Seeing that Lear had already taken the Night Rose, Jacqueline became even more angry. "Boy, don't be so arrogant before the fight. I took out the Night Rose as a bet. It is an extraordinary weapon. What can you take out?" Lear raised his eyebrows. He had never thought about this question before. Using money as a bet, the value of an extraordinary weapon is immeasurable. With the money he has at his disposal now, he won't be able to come up with coins of equivalent value even if he empties it out. He was a little distressed, and after thinking for a long time, he said, "I'll use a promise from the Stuart family as a bet. If you can accept it, the duel will continue." This was the only comparable bet he could think of. As an ancient family of war knights and dukes and nobles of the kingdom, the Stuart family's promise can be said to be quite weighty. "Can you represent Stuart? I am my father's only son." Trigger mission, arrogant showdown, C rank, you challenged Jacqueline to a duel, and defeated a mid-level berserker without using any spells. I have to say that this behavior was reckless and arrogant. Task reward, 50,000 experience points, Night Rose, extraordinary, penalty for failure, a promise from the Stuart family. Sure enough, inheriting the player's panel will naturally trigger the game tasks. Looking at the system panel that popped up in front of him, Lear's eyes flickered slightly. He closed the panel and followed Jacqueline to the backyard of the blacksmith shop. The storefront doesn't look big from the outside, but the backyard is actually quite large, with all kinds of weapons displayed on one side. Jacqueline called out to Lear, "Pick any weapon over there. It's fair that we use weapons of the same quality." Lear nodded slightly and drew out a long sword. Primary weapon, increases attack strength by 10 points, no other attributes. "Boy, it's not too late for you to regret now, otherwise I will beat you up severely when the fight starts." Jacqueline took out a big hammer and looked at him fiercely. Lear did not speak, but just stood there quietly. The opponent was a mid-level berserker, a branch profession under the law of war, known for its violent power. Normally, it would tend to add points to strength and physique, and its shortcoming was lack of agility. Yet he doesn't have any skills other than spells, and the only way he can win the duel without using spells is to take advantage of his speed. His eyes became deep, and he held the sword in front of him, feeling all the energy fluctuations in his body. Since he could gain the extraordinary sword proficiency of his previous life when he got the long sword, the sword skills that had already been ingrained in his bones would naturally awaken in his new body. You have acquired the skill Aslan Royal Swordsmanship, Legend. A smile appeared on Lear's lips, and the next second his figure disappeared from the spot before Jacqueline, who was standing opposite, could react. Lear came in front of him and chopped him on the head with his sword. Shocked by Lear's speed, Jacqueline quickly raised his hammer to defend himself. Boom! With a loud bang, Jacqueline flew backwards. An irresistible force came from the hammer, leaving him completely powerless to resist. He flew backwards until he reached the courtyard wall not far away and knocked it down. Jacqueline was still somewhat unconscious, and most of his life was gone. His strength attribute is 50 points, but facing Lear's sword it was like being hit by a giant beast. Is this a power a mage should have? Lear stood where Jacqueline had just stood, his sword still upright in front of him, like an elegant gentleman. End of this chapter. Chapter 10, 100 Seconds of Real Manliness. Feeling the power within his body to do whatever he wanted, Lear felt more comfortable than ever before. Aslan's royal swordsmanship, his signature skill in his previous life, is an extremely rare legendary swordsmanship in the game. To acquire this skill, you need to have an affinity with the law of war of 80% and be recognized by Queen Salix of Aslan. She was an absolutely powerful queen in the later stage of the game. When Lear came into contact with her, the queen was already a powerful figure at the peak of legend. In order to gain the queen's approval, Lear tried his best, and it is not an exaggeration to say that he was a bootlicker. However, he was different from the original Lear, and he succeeded in licking. From then on, the name Blade Waltz resounded throughout the law game. The effect of Aslan's royal swordsmanship is to transform the three attributes of strength, constitution and dexterity. You can keep only the lowest 1 point of attribute, and then transfer the excess attributes of strength and constitution to agility to achieve incredible speed. You can also convert all attributes into strength when attacking the target, causing terrifying lethality. There is only 1 second of cooldown time between each attribute transformation, which can be said to be extremely incredible. Such a terrifying effect makes Lear invincible in the game. However, although the effect is powerful, its consumption is also huge. When the sword technique is activated, 1% of the maximum magic value is consumed per second, and all magic recovery effects will be invalid during this period. This means that Lear can only last 100 seconds at most. 100 seconds of true manliness. Jacqueline, who was lying among the rubble of the courtyard wall, finally came to his senses and slowly climbed up. He looked at Lear standing not far away and began to doubt his life. Are you really a wizard? Of course. Lear chuckled, magic power surged, and an ice arrow appeared in his empty left hand. Jacqueline opened his mouth. He could not have mistaken the arcane fluctuations. This was a mage, but a wizard who doesn't use spells to daze himself. This must be the law of war playing a joke on me. Although I don't know how Lear defeated me, failure is failure and there is no doubt about it. With a gloomy face, Joaquin took out his heirloom from the backyard. Opening the black box, a rapier appeared before Lear's eyes. The entire rapier exudes a sharp aura. The hilt seems to be wrapped in a rose and is inlaid with black gems. The sword body is a dark black purple color, which looks very mysterious and gorgeous. Name, Knight Rose. Category, Rapier Grade, Extraordinary Attributes, Attack Strength plus 80, Attack Speed plus 30%. Features, Rose Thorns, attacks with added dark erosion, can easily pierce the target's defenses. Special skill, Night Rose, a rose indulged in the darkness of the night, cannot appear in the world and cannot be sensed. Requirements, War Law Affinity 30%. Looking at the attribute panel of the rapier in front of him, Lear raised his eyebrows. Judging from his experience of using swords countless times in his previous life, this rapier is quite excellent and is basically enough to be used in the middle and late stages of the game. This is the best weapon I have. It was passed down from my father. I hope you can treat it well. Jacqueline looked at the rapier in the box reluctantly, as if he was reminiscing about the past. Lear nodded, picked up the rapier, and said seriously, "Then I thank you for your gift. You completed the mission Arrogant Showdown. You have obtained 50,000 experience points. Night Rose, Extraordinary." System prompts appear in front of you. Lear glanced at the panel, expressionless, and then said, "I won't take your sword for nothing. If you have any trouble, you can come to Stuart House to find me. I will do my best to help you through it. The duel just now was not meant to provoke you, but to prove to you that I am worthy of this sword." Jacqueline smiled awkwardly, coughed twice, and did not respond to Lear's words. Instead, he asked, "I heard that you will have a duel with the son of the Duke of Norton in a week?" "Yes. Lear raised his head. I'll go and see. Don't bring shame to Knight Rose. Jacqueline said seriously. Lear was stunned for a moment, then he laughed and answered seriously, Of course not, I swear in the name of the law of war. Lear didn't stay in the blacksmith shop for long and left soon. He didn't ask about the origins of Knight Rose and the old blacksmith. He just came to get the sword and was not interested in anything else. As soon as he returned home from the blacksmith shop, he couldn't wait to practice swordplay. It felt like he had returned to his previous life. He was still the war knight, but many of his skills were gone. Only those sword skills that were deeply engraved in his soul remained. The effect of the extraordinary sword specialization was overwritten and turned into a legendary rapier specialization. Increases attack power by 80% and attack speed by 100%. In his previous life, he used a rapier, and his understanding of the rapier was much deeper than that of ordinary swords. There are also some other sword techniques that appear in the skill column, which are transitional sword techniques before he learns the Aslan Royal Sword Technique. In this way, Lear spent another 3 days rehabilitating his sword skills. Driving range. Ino's eyes were full of stars as she watched Lear attacking the alchemical puppet with a rapier. In the past few days, she has witnessed Lear's superb swordsmanship, which can be described in one word: precise and elegant. She likes the current Lear better than the previous Lear, who held a staff enchanted spells. Lear was used to the little maid's admiration. Holding the Knight Rose in his hand, he pierced the alchemical puppet in front of him into a sieve in an instant. The legendary rapier specialization and the attack speed bonus of Knight Rose have allowed Lear's attack speed to reach an astonishing level. With the special skills of Knight Rose, Lear, an ordinary high-level professional, has the confidence to fight head-on, not to mention if he uses Aslan's royal swordsmanship. Knight Rose's special skill is to turn the blade into an invisible blade. As if it does not exist. It's a bit like the Wind King barrier in the anime Night King that Lear had seen in his previous life, but even stronger. Even when the Wind King's barrier was attacking at high speed, one could still vaguely see the airflow, but his Knight Rose was completely invisible, without even a trace. Master, where did you learn your swordsmanship? It feels like you're even better than Miss Avian. Ino asked with a confused look on his face. She had been staying with Lear since he brought her back from the slums, and had never seen Lear practice swordsmanship. It was really incredible that she became like this just because she brought back a sword 3 days ago. Ino, do you need to learn swordsmanship from my master? You will learn it automatically just by holding the sword. Lear laughed at Ino and put on a stiff front. He put away the Knight Rose and saw the girl at the window on the 3rd floor out of the corner of his eye. Milia was looking at him secretly again. He smiled and was so busy practicing sword skills that he almost forgot about the princess. Tomorrow is the duel with Eric. It's a good time to go see Milia before the duel and brush up on my affinity with the law. After such a long time, it's time to calm down and harvest the leeks. He raised his head and looked at the girl on the 3rd floor, a dangerous smile appearing on the corner of his mouth. After seeing the smile on Lear's face, Milia moved away from the window like a frightened little rabbit and quickly pulled the curtains. Milia sat on the soft big bed in the room, looking a little nervous. Ever since she was caught peeping at Lear practicing magic last time, she had been a little afraid that Lear would come looking for her again. But 3 days had passed and there was no movement. What exactly does Lear want to do? Is he really just imprisoning himself here to keep himself alive? End of this chapter.